Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. I will do a bit of gossipy talk right now to get things squared out of the way so that there won't be questions and we can go forward with just doing the works of Aristotle and other nonsense like that. I thought I was going to have quite a lot of time to do videos. That's why I said that I was going to start doing them again. And 1 week later, my daughter had to be taken out of public school. What? Mr. Cropper, your daughter was in public school? Why? Because I told my wife a long time ago when my daughter was like 1, I said, someday she's going to want to go to school. And we're going to have to let her. And it's going to be a disaster. And otherwise, she'll rebel. She'll always wonder what she was missing out on and what the other kids were doing. It will seem magical to her. It will seem amazing and wonderful. So we've got to let her try it. She wanted to ride the big yellow school bus. She wanted to go to class. She wanted to have a teacher. So she wanted to go eat lunch in the school. She wanted to go play on the playground. She wanted to do it all. We didn't have the money to put her in any sort of private school here in Connecticut, God forbid. And we have applied to magnet schools, and if she gets into one of those, we'll try it. They cannot be as bad as the public schools. So, now I have her every day that I'm not working. So, it's less possible to do videos than I thought it was going to be. Of course, as soon as I made the announcement, things change, and that's fine, but I'm still working on videos, and we'll continue to produce them. But let's talk about her public school experience. It started off badly. The first week, she came home with her potato chips in her school lunch. She was not allowed to eat at school because she was told they were unhealthy. And I was not happy. I almost called a lawyer. I was so upset. And my wife said, look, she likes school. She's enjoying it. Just back off and let her. Okay. So we don't send potato chips anymore, right? It's a slippery slope. Fast forward 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the math she's bringing home. These big sets of squares, and inside the squares are different numbers, and you break the numbers down and add them up. And I couldn't understand some of the questions, some of the instructions. And my daughter's 6, and she's supposed to read these things that I think are either ungrammatical or they were using the words incorrectly. So when they say, do this to a square, add that to this, they would use euphemistic words and strange things, and they would use words wrong, or it just wasn't grammatical. I don't know, but it was not understandable to me. And there were a few times that I just looked at the worksheet, came up with something I thought was reasonable to put the dots in different places, did it for her, and said, there, just do the next one. It was really, really insidious. And she needed to be learning to add and subtract, and she wasn't. Well, she didn't need because I had already taught those. She was learning to multiply here at home. But she wasn't even learning to add and subtract in the school. She was learning this nonsense of taking numbers apart and putting them together and just blowing her crow epistemology. She just could not understand what was happening or why. And so I'm moving her on to carrying and borrowing so that she can add and subtract large numbers, and multiplication so that she can then take the step to division, because multiplication is just adding them up and trying to memorize what they are added up. If you can do addition, you can do multiplication. So she's learning to carry and borrow. And for 5 months straight, the nonsense she brought home from the schools was nonsense. It wasn't doing any good. All right, that was bad enough. Then there's this reading. Are you kidding me? What are they doing down there? I send them a little girl who can read in English and German. She has a German vocabulary of 50 or 100 words. And she can read sentences in German. There are dozens and dozens of sentences she can read fine in German. And she can read in English. She can read very well in English. Pretty good sized words. She can sound them out. So what happens when she goes to the public school? She gets taken out of the class and put into special ed reading for an hour and a half a day or whatever period it is. What? Are you kidding me? Does that mean that the other students in that school read better than my daughter, which is not possible? So what's going on? It means they cannot figure out what a child knows. Their one job is to figure out what a child knows and teach it to them. Expand on their knowledge. Explain more about what they haven't learned about yet. No, none of it. They couldn't even find out that she was able to read. And so they stuck her in a special ed class. Now, what kind of abysmal waste of time was that? Probably wasn't a waste of time, because you probably can't do any worse than being in the regular classroom. Probably didn't matter. I don't know. But to think that my daughter, who can read better than any other kid her age at that whole school in 2 languages, needs special ed in reading is so pathetic. And then the books that they sent home for her to read were Jill Saw a Dog. The Dog Ran. Page after page of this. My daughter can read anything. One day I was so just like I couldn't figure out what to do with her reading wise. So I handed her Philosophy Who Needs It by Ayn Rand. And we just opened to page 28 or something. And I just said, start reading here. Just chose a paragraph. And she went through that like a little Marine. Disestablishmentarianism and anti-fascist and propaganda and all these words. And she made it right through them. And I was just having fun. I was just having fun. She was just a little monkey for me in that moment. And then you've got to give her material she can read and understand and challenge it. And since then I've had her read a few paragraphs of Shakespeare and stuff just for fun. And I offer her, do you want to read an entire book of yours to me? Or do you want to read 2 paragraphs from one of Daddy's books? And so she's always got that choice, and she almost always chooses her books. But with a kid at that reading level, why would she get a special ed teacher? And why would she get these special materials sent home? It's either because my daughter was uncooperative, and they can't figure out the one job they have to do to figure out what she knows. They couldn't do it. They were thwarted by a 6-year-old. They were outsmarted by a 6-year-old. Okay, fine. Then they're going to waste money and time. They're spending all this extra money for one-on-one lessons for a girl who knows how to read probably better than anybody else in her class, and God forbid, but probably better than every child at that school. And absolutely pathetic that they cannot figure out what a child knows and then expand on it. Pathetic. But that's where the reading situation was. History? What does she know about history? She knew that George Washington was our president, but she thought he was still alive. She didn't, so I don't know what they were teaching him. What were they telling her? She didn't know very much else about him. She didn't know about any of the other presidents. She doesn't know about Indians. That's right, Indians. The one thing she's ever been able to tell me about a lesson about the past or history or anything is that Indians are nice, and they are nice to animals, and they take care of the trees and rivers, and hunters are bad. Hunters shoot animals, and that we shouldn't shoot animals. Now, she was taken out the next week. It was just getting out of control. And she brought home this book called Ivan the Gorilla. Got it here, don't I? The One and Only Ivan, which it turns out was a scandal, and people apparently were upset throughout the town about the contents of the book. I was so upset I skipped whole pages, and my daughter was into the story and trying to be involved with the story, and I had to skip whole pages of it because of they said, oh, the evil humans were bad, they hurt me, and they locked me in the cage, and they took me away. I hate those bad humans. And then on to the next paragraph. And the thoughts that they're trying to put into the kids' heads are just sick. So it had to come to an end. Now, apparently, they think we still have one of the books that they sent home for this special ed reading stuff. I don't think we do, because if I saw it, I would be very upset. So I've looked around and I don't think we have it. But they called. And she said, if you have any questions, just call me. And I said, I do have a question. It was her special ed teacher, the woman who actually did the special ed with my daughter. And I said, so I understand that she was given special ed for reading. Do you think that there were other students in her class who needed the help more than she did? Pretty straightforward question. Couldn't get an answer. The answer was like this. Some kids come to us and they need a little bit of help with the comprehension, and some of them need a little bit more one-on-one, and they just do so much better with just a little bit of that one-on-one to sort of help them. Okay. And I said, do you think Sonia was at a level where she needed help reading? And she said, Sonia actually was very good at knowing what to do when she came to a word she wasn't familiar with, and she needed a little help with comprehension and being able to answer questions about the stuff, but she was very good with words she wasn't familiar with and decoding them. Oh, I said decoding. I said, by decoding, do you mean sounding them out? And she said, we don't say sounding them out anymore. And I cut her off and went on a small tirade. Woo! I was mad. I said, that is the reason I have had to withdraw my daughter from the public schools. Your utter total failure to teach them anything is pathetic and insidious. And I didn't give her a chance to reply, of course. She said, I'm sorry you feel that way. And I said, I'm sorry you're doing this to them. Please consider quitting your job and doing something better with your life. Goodbye. And I hung up, and she called right back and said, I think we got disconnected. I said, yeah, I think that's what happened. That's probably her calling again. And I said, well, I hope you give a little bit of thought to what I've said about the damage that you're doing to our future generation. Again, she said, I'm sorry you feel that way. And again, I said, well, I'm sorry that you're doing that to the kids. And she said, well, I don't have any more time. Goodbye. And that was the end of it. So who knows where that'll go. The police will probably come. They'll say we have school property. They'll probably raid the house and arrest me. That'll be all fun. But what a pathetic group of people down there. Can't even teach a 6-year-old to read who knows how to read. Can't they take a 6-year-old who knows how to add and subtract perfectly well, brilliantly well, and they can't teach her the first bit of math. They confuse her and confound her. And she's doing stuff that's for 10-year-olds in the public school system, and she's 6. Here at home she is doing stuff for 10-year-olds. But I don't know if the 10-year-olds even get taught that anymore. Do they ever get taught to carry and borrow? Do they ever get taught to actually multiply and divide? I don't know. I don't know what's going on in there, and I'm not going to find more out about it. It's a pain and a nuisance because, my wife and I worked at the private homeschool thing for 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, we were still both working weekend jobs to make ends meet. So basically, now I need to write a book for my experiences, and then I can help thousands of people instead of just a dozen kids. So it's better that way, but I never really wanted to run a private school. I wanted to teach college. I want to teach adult level stuff. So that's the direction we're moving in now, but my daughter is not going to be able to take any more public schooling, even if I teach her at home, which I was doing, even if I help her with her homework so that it's not onerous for her. It's just not going to work. She hates it. She hated it by the end. She didn't like anything about it. And they had stupid rules, like the kids at recess couldn't go play on the playground equipment. And like one day a week they could go on the playground equipment. Not because other kids were on it. In fact, there was this enormous football field of grass and a small asphalt parking lot and the playground equipment, all right next to each other. And they weren't allowed to leave the asphalt. They couldn't go on the grass, and they couldn't go on the playground equipment. All week long except for one day. Why? I don't know. I'm sure they had a good reason, right? No, probably not. So what kind of stupid things are they doing there? What kind of stupid rules are they enforcing? What kind of behavior do they let kids get away with, hitting or punching or kicking or swearing? And other rules, other kids get punished for doing perfectly reasonable things, like tattling on somebody who kicked them. So what a disgusting culture. Anyways, my daughter's out of the public schools and back at home, so I'm taking care of her again. And I wanted to let y'all know about that little conversation that I just had with that lady. Hopefully I caused her some sort of mental crisis, but that's what they're doing to our students, our kids, our children in the public schools. They're not sounding words out. They're not learning phonics. They do decoding. Decoding? Give me a break.